This is the Warminster Town Football Club Supporter Podcast. This is the podcast by supporters for supporters. We bring you match reports, interviews and much more. We travel both home and away to bring you the excitement of non-league football to wherever you are. Welcome along to another episode of the Warminster Town Supporter Podcast, and we have got some interesting things lined up for you today. None other than Mr. Andrew Crabtree is joining us to give us his views as the manager of Warminster Town Football Club on how the pre-season has gone and what he plans for the future. Let's hear more about that from Andy. We also have another special guest, and that is Sandie Webb. Sandie is the co-author of the book Another View from the Terraces, which is a 125-year history of the Western League. And we look forward to hearing Sandie's thoughts on that book, on the history of the Western League, and much more. So do stay tuned. Don't go away. Well, let's kick things off, first of all, by calling the one and only Jamie House. Hi, Jamie. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. You?
Excellent. Yes, thank you very much indeed. So looking forward to some football coming up very shortly with the kick-off of the new season. So first of all, though, we had one more match just to report on, which was the last pre-season game when Bradford Town came along to Weymouth Street. Any views on that game?
Yeah, another higher league opposition coming to Warminster Street for the final pre-season of the pre-season. It was a good game. It was Bradford perhaps not surprisingly looking the better side from the outset. It was kind of as you were really, I suppose, as in the other games. They were making chances early on. They managed to bang home a couple of goals. Charlie Walton, obviously a former Town player, getting the first one, doing what he does best, and then a second one a bit later on. But Warminster didn't look completely outclassed again. I think we held our own for most of the game, and obviously we got pulled one just right on 90 minutes from George Butler across heading into the goal. So 2-1, not too bad a scoreline against higher league opposition. So I think there's a lot of positives to take from that pre-season as well.
Good. Well, that's true, isn't it? And we're going to be listening to Andy's view on that very shortly after this little conversation. He's going to tell us about his thoughts on the pre-season. So it'll be good to hear about that. So, and I think on all the games, we haven't been outclassed when the higher league have turned up. Learned a lot of lessons from that. So we'll get Andy's thoughts on that shortly. And now it's time for Thoughts from the Dugout. Good evening, Andy. Thank you for joining us on the podcast. How are you doing?
Okay, Roland. Good evening. Good to speak to you.
Seems
a long time.
It's going back a bit, yeah.
Yeah, 4 months without football was a long time.
It was, and then we had the bad weather as well. Made it even longer, really, didn't it? In many ways, we lost so much football over that few weeks or that few months, really, over the new year. It was pretty dire, but never mind. We've got what has gone, and we've got a new season to look forward to.
Yeah.
So how do you think the pre-season's gone? We've had some quite good teams to play. So how do you think it's gone, Andy?
We certainly played some good teams, some of them 2 levels above us. And mainly, you play pre-seasons to try out new players, new ideas, and fitness. And it's all geared up to the first game of the season. So, you don't get any points for winning friendlies. So really, although it's nice to win them and it's good for confidence, but, we have worked hard in those games and you can see the fitness is getting there because, like we say, 4 months without football and we didn't play a great deal before that. And it's really sort of been hard to get the guys back into it. It takes a long time and get them to where you want them to be. And I think we're not too far away now. I think, we showed signs of it at Westbury for the first 45 minutes. That's, not far from where we want to be. And I thought at times in the Bradford games, we looked very good, especially the first 20 minutes.
Yeah.
We didn't show it all the time because we had a spell where we couldn't keep hold of the ball, but, it's not what you want. But we are getting back there somewhere. And, it's Saturday that matters. It's not what happened in the friendly against Froome or happened against Melksham. It's what happens when you play in league games and you're judged on that over the season. This will be long forgotten. So, we need to get off to a positive start on Saturday against Radstock.
Yeah. Always a tough team to play, aren't they? So we have good and bad against them over the years, I think. So be interested to see how they turn out.
Last season they had a very good side. And we won't be underestimating them by any stretch.
So, Andy, we've had a few player movements. We've lost a few, it seems, and gained a few. Can you give us a little bit of an insight into who's come and gone?
Obviously, we've lost a couple. Lewis Graham was one. He's gone to Bradford, and we wish him well. You can't fault anybody that wants to go and play in a higher standard of football. So, Lewis wants to test himself at a higher level, and good luck to him. I've spoke to him and wished him all the best. As long as he brings his tracksuit back, that's fine.
I'll make a note of that. You mean he didn't bring it back when he came from the Bradford team?
Jim Vincent, he's gone across to Corsham. He's got a lot of friends over there that play over there. So again, good luck to him. We don't have players on contract, so it's very difficult to tie people down. And we have had a lot of loyalty from our players over the years.
Yeah.
Certainly while I've been involved, players have been very loyal. So I can't fault them for that. And so when they leave, we have to look after them when we've got them here, and we try to do that as best we can. Sometimes it's very difficult because people want a little bit more, and in this instance, the two guys there I've mentioned, it's nothing to do with they wanted a little bit more. They it's their own personal ambition, and you can't fault them for that.
No, that's it. I mean, they want to test themselves out, and fair play. They've given us good service. I mean, Lewis has come on tremendously, especially since he went into defence, hasn't he?
He was always a striker. Really. It was a decision sort of we made a couple of seasons back. It was Derek Graham and myself who made that decision, and Derek's now gone on to be chairman of Froome. I noticed tonight on on Twitter. So brilliant, He hails from Warminster, so that's quite an achievement. He's now the chairman at Froome, so brilliant. Good luck to him. I hope it goes well for him, and with Lewis and with Jim.
Yeah, indeed. And what about players that have come in? I see we've got one or two have been tried out on the friendlies.
Yeah, we've got a few in. Joel Sissons has decided to come back with us. Joel's a young player. He spent most of his youth football at Swindon Town, and I like Joel a lot. And I hope he comes back with us and has a good season because he's got so much potential. He's a good footballer. He needs to, get in there this season, stamp his authority, and I think he's learnt a bit since, he was last with us, and he's looking forward to it as much as I'm looking forward to having him on board. So that'll be a good signing. We got two returning, which is Martin Johnson, who is now my coach. He's been doing most of the pre-season training and will continue to do that. He's got his own gym, so it does help regard. We'll be going over there and having nights in the gym and an hour session, and he puts them through their paces, which is great. George Butler is back. He went in the Marines, didn't have a very successful time there because he had a problem with his ankle, but he's come back to us, which is great. Another lad we've got on board is Owen Bartley. He's a local lad. Spent his time, a lot of his youth football, he was at Luton Town as a youngster. He had a really bad injury and didn't play for 3 or 4 years. He did his cruciate ligament in his knee, and he's back with us. He obviously he needs a little bit of fitness because he's never really played in men's football again. So it's a learning curve for him, but it's good to have him on board. And another lad we've signed is Seth Wayne from Melksham Town, which is, he's I know Melksham's manager Rich Fay very, very well, and I'm thankful for him letting us have Seth. Seth's coming to us for the season. He's a young lad, but he's an exceptionally talented young lad, and we nearly had him last year. But this year he has put pen to paper and he's come over and he's looked very promising in the games against Westbury and against Bradford. So it's good to have him on board, and I'm sure his name will be noticed in the goal scoring charts come the end of the season.
That's
We're
what we want.
expecting a lot from him.
Yeah, that's good. Excellent. And I've got a goalkeeper as well.
We've got Callum back with us, yeah. Obviously, my son's moved on. He's gone to Odd Down. I think it's probably in his best interest to go and. I think he can play at a higher. Again, he can play at a higher standard of football, and he has played at a higher standard of football. And I think it's best for him to go and play in a higher standard of football and get more football under his belt, because we're blessed. We've got three really good. We had three really good goalkeepers, and you cannot keep three really good goalkeepers happy all the time.
No.
And from Carl's point of view, he should be playing at a higher standard, and good luck to him. I don't think he always gets appreciated as much because he's my son. He's sort of, you get underappreciated. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think he has to go and do things on his own accord, and I wish him all the luck in the world, and I should be going over to watch him, when they have some evening games or whatever, because I know a lot of the people over at Odd Down, so I should be looking out for them.
That's good. Excellent. Well, we've certainly seen in the matches we've had some splendid saves pulled off by both Nathan Ball and young Callum there. Have been they were tested by some of the teams quite substantially and came out well on that, didn't they?
Yeah, Callum's a young lad and he played for me before, and he suffered a shoulder injury and he had an operation and he hasn't played for sort of 2 years. He came back and played a little bit of football for one of the local sides. But he sort of rang me up and said, could I come training and whatever? I said, yeah, of course you can, get back over here. And he's trained hard and he's showing the benefits of it. He's done really well, as is Nathan. Nathan's a very good goalkeeper.
He's pulled off some super saves of late, and very, very good, very good. So, and it's nice to have a backup at least, anyway, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
I know at times we've had to put other players in the goal because Nathan's not been there or whatever, and you suffer from it really. As hard as they try for a natural goalkeeper, you've got a problem. So it's good to have that at least two.
Poor old Stuart went in goal at Longwell Green, and he's still he broke his finger and he's still suffering from it now. So, he's had operations on it. So it was, I don't think we'll be able to put him in goal this year.
No, he's probably not going to relish the idea of going back in between the sticks again. No, right. It's too dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, good. So things are looking okay then. So we've got a squad. At least we're ready to go. What are your thoughts on this season? Obviously going to be a bit of an unusual one, kicking off late and COVID regulations and all that kind of thing going on. But what's your thoughts then?
Obviously, we want to do as well as we can in the league. Your league is your bread and butter. We're still actually in last year's league, Les Phillips Cup, the League Cup. So we're still in that, and we have to go to down to Tavistock in September and play a quarter-final game down there. So, we have got some cup interest this year, because unfortunately we won't be in the FA Vars due to an oversight, and unfortunately we won't be in that this year.
No, it's a shame because we had such a wonderful run last season. It was It was great for the club to have that run, and the fans, and
Yeah, it
certainly got
was.
a lot of mentions in the non-league world that Warminster was certainly punching above their weight, and we did well.
It brought us a lot of publicity. It brought us a lot of money in as well. You know, and it raised our profile somewhat. You know, and as a club, that should be our aim. You know, to raise our profile. You know, for all the right reasons as well.
Yeah.
And it was great. The interest, you know, it generated, and I thought it was great. You know, I know the players enjoyed it, and I know everybody at the club enjoyed it. And we had some great days. You know, and we were speaking about it. You know, the day at Roman Glass St George when we went on that Sunday afternoon was, you know, the highlight of a lot of them young players' football career at senior football. Do you know what I mean? Because we've not had any. You know, we've not had any success, you know, at league level or cup level, and that'll be the highlight of some of their career for a while. You know, and I hope it isn't, because we want to go on and win things. You know.
Yeah.
But you know,
Got the league
it was a great day out. It was great. You know, we had over 100 supporters there, and it was brilliant. You know, the atmosphere was brilliant, and you know, afterwards in the changing room and that, we had a good old sing song, and it was brilliant.
Yeah.
Which is what
They're
you
the
want.
days to live for, aren't they? Yeah. Yeah. It's to treasure those. You can't take those memories away, but you hopefully recreate a few more along the way now, which would be good.
Yeah, and I mean, the shame was that had we been in the Vars, we'd have gone straight in the second round proper as well, because we get exempt from the earlier rounds. But
tis a shame. That would have been good, something to look forward to. But never mind. So, is our Tavistock trip going to be a midweek one still, as it was before? Going to be
that won't be a midweek game. It'll be on a Saturday now.
Oh, good.
They've arranged it so we can go down.
That would be good.
So we will be going down. I think it's 20 round about the 24th or something like that of September.
Excellent. Well, we'll look that one up and let people know in good time so they can have a little trip down to Tavistock and enjoy a game of football down there. It'd be nice. It'd be a good day out, or even a weekend.
I've been there once. I've been down there once before. I went down there with Froome, and it is a good setup, and they are a good side. So, and they nearly beat Froome that day as well. So, you know, we've got an enviable task going down there. Really, I think a lot of Premier League teams don't face a daunting task going down there, let alone us. So, we'll need to be at our best that day for sure.
Yes, yeah. Well, you never know. Stranger things have happened, Andy. It can happen.
Well, it happened a few times last year against higher league opposition. So, you know,
we shocked a few along the way.
We can add another scout.
Yeah, brilliant. So we look forward to that. So obviously, first game of the season going to be Radstock, as you say. So and then we've got a little trip to Wincanton on the Tuesday after that. So lots to look forward to. Get the season underway, and hopefully we'll get the fans back through the gate again.
Yeah, I mean the club has undergone quite extensive sort of refurb. They've done all the roofs inside the club. You know, all the ceilings have been tiled and new lighting has been put in. Now got Sky Sports in there, so you know, to try and generate sort of an atmosphere after the games when the football's on. And a lot of work has been done, and a lot of time has been spent out there by volunteers, and you know, which is only a good thing, you know.
Yeah,
I know. I went up there cutting the grass behind the dugouts for a couple of Saturdays, and there was a few of us there. And I know Graham can now get behind Graham Kitley, the groundsman, who's got the cracking smashing. To be fair,
it looks great.
Yeah, and he can now get the gang mowers behind there and cut the grass behind the dugouts, and we can use that area for doing our sort of warm-ups on a Saturday without messing up the pitch too much, which would be a great sort of help when the wet weather comes in.
Yeah,
because it does tend to churn up a little bit, you know, when it's a bit soft.
Yeah, and it says if last year's anything to go by, and the end of this summer so far, we could be in for a lot more rain.
Well, it seems that way,
we don't want it, but signs not good.
Yeah, we don't get patchy rain, we get downpours.
That's it. Yeah, doesn't help, does it? Called overwatering, that is, as far as the pitch is concerned. But never mind. Well, Andy, thank you very much for joining me We appreciate you taking the time to do this, and obviously look forward to having more conversations with you, if that's all right, over the season. And really,
of course.
Help the fans learn a bit more about the club, how we're going, and updates, that kind of thing. And appreciate your time. Thank you.
It's a pleasure, Roland. Thank you very much.
Coming up next, it's our guest of the week. Well, I'm pleased to be joined today by Sandie Webb, who is going to talk to us a little bit about her history with the Western League football, and also the authorship of this wonderful book, Another View from the Terraces. So we're going to chat to Sandie about that. So Sandie, welcome along to the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
And thank you very much for inviting me. I'm absolutely really excited about this. Wonderful.
Brilliant. Well, we've got some questions for you. So I'm going to fire away a few questions. And firstly, what I'd like to know is how you came to be interested in Western League football.
Well, that goes back to 1981 when I was on my own with a couple of lads. Chippenham were just winning the first division of the Western League, and my brother was in goal. So I used to bring my lads up to Hardnewsh Park, and from then onwards things sort of got rather serious with the Western League, because a year later the chairman Doug found himself on his own with a couple of lads, and that was history. Between there and 1996, we spent day and night eating, breathing, drinking football, and the Western League in particular. Doug became a committee member, he's now vice president, and with our heart has always been with, no matter what league our Chippenham has been in, our heart has always been with the Western League. So that's how we started. Yeah.
That's good. It's interesting. So you become addicted then, really?
We became, I think we became addicted, and it was because of, it doesn't just pan out to those 90 minutes on the pitch. It's all about the friendship. It's about the travelling, because especially when we first started, I can remember, I think it was Falmouth we went down to, and it was on a Sunday, and there wasn't really the lovely M5, which I think is quite flooded anyway now, but and the Sunday opening hours meant there was nowhere open. We travelled all the way down there. There was no T-bar open. Travelled all the way back again, but we still managed to go the following few days later to another game. You know, it just springs up, and it just springs eternal, and it gets into your blood. And I'm sure anyone that listens to this has got the same feeling for football as we always have that.
That's it. Yeah, there's something about it, isn't there, really? So you've touched on a little bit there. Obviously, your connection to Chippenham Football Club, but my research tells me that you were the chair of Chippenham Football Club. You know, how did you find that experience?
Oh my goodness, it was probably the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. I'd gone off back when we left Chippenham Football Club or both of us left in '96. Doug kept his connection with the football club, and then obviously they went to Wembley in 2000, and riding high, very high. And then I was in local politics, so I was slightly away from it. And then in 2004. Bad things were happening at the football club. There'd been a lot of debts racked up, and it just happened that the chairman said, "Okay, then I'm going," and the chairman left, and there were about 3 or 4 people there. We had Steve White, who had only been appointed a few months before, and all the promise that had been given was there in the anticipation. And I just got dragged in, and I became chairman. And I have to tell you that at the time, the strange thing was, and it's only 2004, which doesn't seem too long ago, but at the time, Delia Smith at Norwich was the only other female chairman. Mm-hmm. So I got phoned up by loads of people saying, "Oh, what's it like to be a chairman?" Yeah. And it was so difficult, because when I chaired Town Centre Management Partnership, I was mayor, and I chaired lots of things in local politics, and there was never this difficulty with being female. I suppose it was because people weren't used to it. I can remember we'd be entertaining, and someone from the Southern League would come up to the ground, and I can remember one chairman in particular came in, headed off towards all the men, came up to me and said, "Without people like you doing teas at half time, you know, we just..." And I had to say, "Well, I'm very sorry, but I'm actually chairman." So it was a very, very different sort of atmosphere to be in. And because of the debt, I did tend to wake up in the morning thinking about commercial and how we're going to get some money, and go to bed at night. And that was 2.5 years of that all the time. And so my chairmanship was really commercial manager, and trying to just attract that money to keep the club afloat with obviously with some very good people by my side.
Yeah, so a little bit stressful at the time.
Very much, very much so. But it depends if you're. I mean, I'll be saying this, and people will be listening to this, and they'll know if your heart is in your club, you'd do anything for the club. You know, you really would do anything just to see it survive. And it's not about a club; it's about a community, and it's about people, and it's about everything else attached to football.
That's right, and as long as you've got the will and people around you, you can achieve your goals and even get out of a big hole. Really, then in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and there, every year there's somebody trying to do exactly the same sort of thing, just keep their clubs afloat. And it's always the same that you do tend to get this in and out phase of debts being totally spending too much money, and you can understand spending money. And when you get success like Chippenham had at Wembley, and then we were getting 600 people, 500, 600 people coming to see us, even playing in Western League at that time. And when you get that, I think it all goes to everyone's head a little bit, and your feet aren't on the ground properly. So, yeah, it's very difficult, but it's where your heart is.
Just overextended at the time. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And then if things change, you've got a problem to that commitment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And of course, the recession hit straight after that as well.
Yeah.
No, 2006, 2007, the whole of the world was about to go into one of the deepest recessions that we've had up until now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, very difficult.
That's it. Oh, great. Well, let's talk a little bit then about this wonderful book. I'm calling it a tome, really, can't I? It's 560 pages here. There's quite a work involved in this one. Another view from the Terraces. So it's really the history. At the time, it's 125 years of history. It's a little bit more now. I suppose you can add a little bit more on at some point. But what inspired you to write this wonderful book?
Well, that was really inspired because we'd written the centenary book called A View from the Terraces, and that began about 1988. I think it was, if my memory is right, we were coming back from a game at Minehead, and Les Phillips had recently died, and Les had been so enthusiastic about celebrating 100 years and all his plans and everything, and we both thought, well, hang on a minute, let's do a history. And so that's when we started putting it all together. And so we did the 100-year history, which came out in 1992, which seems such a long time ago now, and that was based on someone who had been born at the same time as the league started, and it was historical. And behind that was because I'm not a statistician, and a lot of history books for football is based on stats, and that is, to me, that is mind blowing. I think that is fabulous. But I tell stories; it's what I do, and so I wanted to tell a story and make it readable. And so I think 2017, 2015, sorry, I was halfway through doing all the prep for doing a Chippenham Town football club history, and the league came to me and said, "Can we have that date for 2017 for the 125 years?" And so I ditched the football club, Chippenham Football Club, but they came second, and spent just 2 years really delving into trying to put it together, which was more difficult because I had to generate something that referred to the 100-year history that we'd already done as well. So hence in the actual storylines, I do refer back to the old history book, which incidentally is our print now.
Yeah, well, this one's available, so I recommend it. What I found fascinating reading, there was quite a few fascinating things, but I'm glad you mentioned that about the history, because reading through this book, I found it quite a bit of a social history account.
Yeah.
What things were really like for people living back then in those days, early days, and different things that happened. Yeah,
I mean, I continued that on with one, as you can see in the background there, called Town United, which I produced last year for Chippenham Football Club. And I even delved deeper into the social history for that, because that was the combination of Chippenham Town and Chippenham United as well. But when you actually look at football, you can't take it away from the history, because it's not only the social history that's going on in your area, it's also the social history that's going on throughout the world sometimes. But war was going on at one time when we were busy kicking the ball around, and the conditions of the people and the people on the ground at any one stage actually does fashion. And you'll see it with the pandemic now, actually. People look back in history and say, my goodness, look what happened to football when the pandemic was on. And everything always seems to affect, because we are a part of our communities, and football does reflect social history very much so.
Yeah, excellent. I also was very surprised when I went through some of the league tables that you've listed at the back in the 1920s and 30s and so on, and see teams in the Western League such as Chelsea and Millwall and Southampton, you know, big clubs at the time, or big clubs now, Premier League clubs, in fact.
Yeah, I think there were two things. At the very beginning, in the early 1904 or 1905 time, clubs were forming, and there wasn't the structure that we had. We didn't actually have the structure that we've got now of the wonderful Premier Division, which you like, that sort of thing, and the league structure. And they were looking for just a structure for football. And I think that they were looking as well because they'd started paying their players, and there wasn't the commercialism. And so they were looking at getting as much money as they possibly could. And we were like a midweek league that they tended to come to. And to be fair, Millwall, who haven't got the best profile now, but they were fantastic with the Western League, because they really did value it as a competition. And they sent all their good players down. And when we had, I think you'll see that when we had our 100 years, that they actually sent down the copies of medals and everything that they had, which was wonderful. Their historian was very, very good to sort of taking part in it. But yeah, I mean, there's also been an awful lot of what we consider to be really good clubs, and they put their reserves into Western League right up to not so long ago. But of course, the FA come along and they choose that it's going to be different, and then big money comes into it, and then we get academies and football changes. But and all we do as the Western League is we just adapt to the changes.
Yeah, that's it.
That's the way that we spy.
Well, it's certainly made it a fascinating read for me going through that. So,
Thank you.
Every now and again, I just flick through those tables just to remind myself of what it used to be like. Yeah, I
have to tell you, the tables were an absolute nightmare, because we had one in the first edition. There was one particular case where our tables didn't coincide with the statisticians' tables, and it turned out that it was a year when the official league finished. But the league then went on, and so you had two tables. You had the completed and the uncompleted. But to actually sit down, me and my poor husband, we had to sit side by side and do line by line by line and check that everything added up, because I know that those statisticians, they are very, very hot on this.
Oh, they'll be going.
And so I hope that they won't find any mistakes in it.
No, that's good. Well, it shows the amount of work that you've put into it. So that's really good, and we thank you for that. I think one of the wonderful things about a book, as opposed to the internet, is who knows if one day the internet will crash and all that lovely data that's been stored on there will just disappear into the ether. And yet somebody somewhere may still have a book on a shelf that can be used, or in obviously the libraries keep them as well.
That is exactly right. And actually, Roland, Chippenham Town Council just recently had a complete big crash, and they were about to lose all their data for the last 20 years. So it can still happen. It can still happen. And as you say, books are always there.
Yeah.
Beautiful things.
Yeah, you watch these genealogy programs on television when they're tracing people back, and they'll come to our era and say, we haven't got a clue. All the data was lost in a computer somewhere. But now you can go back 200 years and pull a birth certificate out or whatever, But
yeah.
But
when I was first way back in 1988, when I was first looking for data, of course we didn't have the internet. I found it so different, right, in another view from the Terraces, because I could go on to British newspapers online, and I could go on to so many things to delve in. But when I first went there, I had to go to Bristol and go down into the depths of the library there and troll through those absolutely dreadful machines that give you a headache, and just find anything at all to actually put into the book. So it was much easier actually to do another view than it was to do a view from the Terraces.
Brilliant. Well, I recommend as many people who are listening and watching to get hold of a copy and read it.
Yeah, can I just give a bit of a plug for that? Because really, if anyone is listening and wants a copy, they should go to their club shop, because then the club shop gets the profit for it. that's the whole point of the league. The league actually have got plenty of these books, but it's to make a profit for the club and to make sure that the league is sort of historically documented.
Brilliant. Well, once we're back in full swing at football, they can go and grab a copy. That'd be great.
Yeah, and if they want one beforehand, I've got my own source as well, and I'll send one, and they can give a donation to their club in return, and I'll send it for free. So I'll give you an email address for that.
That'll be wonderful. Thank you very much. Well, we've had mentioned about the book, but thinking about the past of Western League football, that 125 plus years now of Western League football, looking back on that, how do you think it's going to fare in the future? We're obviously at the moment talking during COVID-19 and, we're not sure when the season's going to start again, but even taking that into account or taking it out of account, whichever way you want to look at it, how do you see the football progressing?
I think I said a bit earlier, I just find the Western League is so adaptable and it tends to be absolutely excellent in the way that it can adapt and survive to any conditions that are thrown at it. When you look at what it's been through, and unfortunately what is happening more and more is it's actually dictated by the people up in London. It's exactly the same as we're finding in local politics, actually, that the people up in Westminster or up at the FA have got their views, but they tend to really, I believe that they only understand down as far as the conference. They don't necessarily understand very much or enough about anything below the conference. And I think the Western League, in the level that we're at in the Western League, all I can see is that at this very moment we're going to become more local, because localism is the buzzword that everybody has got at the moment, both in politics and in football. And I think it'll probably become more local. But one thing that I will say, and I'll say this very genuinely, we are so lucky to have Toolstation. What a fantastic company that has stuck with us through thick and thin, and they've been fully participating as well. And also, we're really lucky to have John and Helen Paul, because what we've got at the top there is we've got people who are club men and women, and they actually understand what it's like to run a club. And I think from a league, for a league to survive, they need that type of knowledge, so that they know all the terrible things that the times when it's freezing cold and you have to go out and you have to dig the water off the pitch and clear the snow off the pitch and things like that just to get your game on. And they understand all that, and they understand all the pressure. So we're very lucky with our structure, and we're lucky with the people.
Yeah, no, that's very good, excellent. So obviously, there are changes planned. As you say, the FA tend to make decisions, and I always say about people that are based within London, the M25 is the end of the world, because they don't seem to know anywhere beyond the end of that,
Yeah. We're very local yokels beyond the M25, I'm afraid, and so you just make sure that your own sector survives, basically, because we understand what we're doing. We understand at the Western League exactly what we're doing and where we're going, and it's just making sure that the representation is there, so that not too much is imposed on the league.
Well, hopefully, sorry.
No, I just think the Southwest is the Southwest. We used to, as I said, we used to go down to Falmouth, but we had some lovely times with Liskeard and Saltash and going down to parts of Cornwall. It was fantastic, and it was a really good league. And there is still that possibility that can actually gel again, which I think would enhance the league.
Good, absolutely, yeah. Well, transport's a little bit easier these days as well, compared to what it was 30, 40 years ago with motorway links and so on. So,
mind you, the times that I've gone down the M5, I won't say that.
No, well, that's true as well. There's the old holiday weekends as well. There's a bit of a problem. Yeah. Yeah, it can be a bit of a problem, can't it? Well, think about your book then. Do you plan to write any more?
Well, as I said, I've just we've just put Town United out, which is very much a social history, but it's a social history, both the local social history of Chippenham and the football in Chippenham, but it also actually, because of the experience that I had with another view from the Terraces and a view from the Terraces, we've actually expanded it so that it's a lot to do with the way that football has evolved itself and how it's affected society and how society has sort of really affected football. So it's a real story. It's a real story. So I've got that one, and that was out last September.
Good.
So, yeah, and I'm not planning. Well, we're not planning another one at the moment. We're
At
going,
the moment.
but I'm sure
no.
something. I'm
Never
sure
say
something
never.
might come up, and it'll probably involve football. I mean, my husband's got this thing. When we left in '96, for a good 10 years, we followed England home and away, and we had some real experiences in Moldova and Georgia and in places in Poland. Some terrible experiences.
Oh, dear.
And my husband was actually changing the camera once in the middle of all the riots in Marseille, and was photographed on the front of the paper. but just things like that. We may tell that story one day, but we'll rest.
That could be interesting. Safer to stick with Western League, I think.
I think it's much cosier to the Western League. It's a fantastic league. It's a friendly league, and I think we're all lucky to be involved.
It is. It's great to go to an away game and you can just chat to anybody there. There's no, them and us. It's,
Well, and that's the thing, you see. You actually, because I'm not attached to a club that's in the Western League now, when we do go to games, if you stand, I hate sitting down. I've got to stand behind the goal to watch football. It's a silly thing, and inevitably you will find people to talk to. And it's wonderful because it's so friendly. It's such a friendly experience. And that is the extension to the actual game of football and kicking the ball around to the boys on the pitch.
Yeah, and that's good. And that's good. We can recommend Western League football to anyone listening and watching, is to say, come along, especially when we know this season can restart and clubs need to catch up a little bit from the COVID-19. Plus, of course, our Western League had a bit of a problem with wet weather at the end. We were struggling to get any games at all. So we had a bad run of nothing and then stopped,
Yeah, absolutely. And the other little thing, of course, is that it's one of the only places you can bring your kids to, and you can watch the football, chat with people, and you know that the kids are going off. You know what's going to happen. Yeah. The kids are going to find something to kick, and they're going to go off and have a game on their own. But they can do it safely, and that's a fantastic thing now, isn't it? To be able to know that your kids are up there and safe and enjoying themselves as well.
Yeah, that's it. It's nice, and it's good to see youngsters coming along, and I think there's been a definite expansion in recent, years of people beginning to find non-league football because they're getting fed up with the overpaid players in the upper leagues and thinking, I've come to watch this, and some of them on that pitch don't really want to be here,
Absolutely correct. We the first thing that we did when we left is we watched Swansea. They'd just gone into the Premier Division, and it was horrible because we couldn't. Oh, we did Swindon as well for a couple of years. But we couldn't really get into it because although we're not used to that level of football, I'm used to, as I say, I'm used to wandering around, talking to people and enjoying and understanding what's going on the pitch. And the style of play that we've got is a wholehearted style of play at Western League. Whereas when you have a look at something like the Premiership, oh my goodness, it's so frustrating just to watch it. I mean, now especially because we're watching it on television. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
no substitute for real Western League football.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you, Sandie, very much for your time, for joining us on the podcast. Certainly appreciate it very much indeed. And I've got another book to read from the sounds of it now, haven't I? Got to get a copy of that.
if I could just say, if anybody wants to get a copy of Another View from the Terraces or Town United, if they just email me on. It's sandiewebb@aol.com. It's an easy thing to remember, or I'm sure you'll be able to find me somewhere.
Brilliant. And you're on Twitter too, aren't you?
Twitter and Facebook, yes.
Yeah. It's good for football fans to be on Twitter, especially Western League, because all the Western League clubs are very good on Twitter, by and large. They all have an account, and
brilliant.
Lots of fans do, which is great,
Yeah, I mean, certainly message me through Twitter. That'd be fantastic. I'm on it 5 or 6 times a day, actually. Yeah. Not I'm addicted.
Well, my phone's always pinging at me. It's switched off now deliberately.
It's been absolutely wonderful talking to you, Rowan. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you very much for all that you do as well. That's absolutely wonderful what you do.
It's been my pleasure, Sandie. Thank you. So once again, my thanks to Sandie for joining us on the podcast. And now it's time for one final chat, this week with Mr. Jamie House. Okay, Jamie, so let's just talk now about what is coming up fixture-wise for Warminster Town.
Yes, the Season is finally starting. We have our very first game at home, 5th of September. That's this coming Saturday against Radstock Town. Kick-off at 3 o'clock, obviously. We've then got Wincanton midweek away on the 8th. That's at 7:30. So we're travelling down there midweek for a midweek game. That's fairly early for a midweek game. We've normally we're a few weeks into the league before we start playing in the middle of the week, but there we are. Then we've got Bishop's Lydiard at home on the 12th, and then Bishop Sutton again at home on the 26th. So a couple of home games in quick succession there. And then to round out the first 5 games of the season, we're away at Portishead on the 3rd of October.
Ah, good. Right. Thanks for that. I'm sure they're games we can all look forward to very much indeed. Evening-wise, they're not. If you look at the fixtures, I've been writing them all out for the season, and nearly everything's on a Saturday, apart from this one.
I was going to say it's amazing. It's amazing.
So probably leaving room for some cup games or whatever we might or might not be playing this season.
Well, hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to be very much at the weekend. So if you want an evening game, make the most of it and come down to Wincanton. Yes. And of course, for fans that can't travel or not well enough, perhaps to make even a home game, don't forget we'll be live on YouTube now, which is going quite well. So
yes,
it is going well. Lots of people watching. We're very pleased about that. And if anyone hasn't subscribed to the channel yet, please look us up. You find the link on the website, warminstertownfc.com, if you want to do it that way, or just straight through YouTube and search for Warminster Town Football Club and hit that subscribe button. It is entirely free. So, Jamie, thanks for your help once again. We look forward to being at the match on Saturday against Radstock and giving a full report afterwards.
You're very welcome. Looking forward to it.
Well, there goes the final whistle, and that brings this week's podcast to an end. We've hoped you enjoyed the Warminster Town Football Club supporter podcast. So before you go, if you haven't done so already, please do subscribe using your favourite platform. Thanks for listening.